Hello, so welcome to Glasgow Loves EU, and this evening we're interviewing Professor Joshua Silver. Joshua Silver is a professor of physics at the University of Oxford. Professor Silver is currently the chief executive of the Centre for Vision in the Developing World. He's taken a significant, hopefully landmark case against the EU on the basis that EU citizenship is permanent and cannot be removed merely on the back of an advisory referendum. So good evening, Professor. Thanks for being with us.
Yeah, hi there.
And we've got Bernd, who's helping us on the IT side, and then we've got Paul, who'll be taking questions from social media. So if you have any questions, you can send them in via Facebook or Twitter. So we'll just get started here. So Professor, could you please tell us about your background and how you became interested in EU citizens' rights?
Yeah, well, my background, I am an experimental atomic physicist. Used to run a research group, study highly charged atomic ions in the University of Oxford. I was testing relativistic quantum mechanics and quantum electrodynamics. I did that for years with a whole research team. I got interested along the way in 1985. I got interested in human vision and how vision works and how the eye works. And I invented actually a whole new technology in the area of visual optics. And if you look behind me, there's a door, and I'm sitting in a room down in the south of France. It's a very long story. I won't bore you with it now, but inventing a new field of optics eventually, a new technology in optics, took me to the south of France. Now, why am I interested in EU citizens' rights? Well, I lived much of the time in France. I like France. I also like the idea that if you're European, you can just move around in Europe, and you're just a European. You can go anywhere. The referendum came along in June 2016. People expected there to be a vote to remain, and there was a very small margin of about 1% or so to leave. And I got suspicious. So I started to investigate the referendum and its aftermath. And the closer I looked, the stranger it appeared. And I could ramble on forever, and I'd better not, because there's 11 questions here you want to ask me. But the thing is that my study of the referendum and its aftermath suggests very clearly that there is no democratic validity whatsoever to the EU leave vote. The vote was the Electoral Commission concluded that there were multiple crimes used to obtain the vote, to procure the vote. There's a suggestion that there was an enormous so-called donation given to the Leave campaigns of £8 million from somewhere to, it's just very fishy, very dodgy. But that's not really, I'm very happy if anyone wants to know. I happen to have, I've got over there, I won't show you now, I have a letter from the Security and Intelligence Committee of Parliament, which relates to an investigation of, in particular, the Russian interference in the referendum, which I think there will be things that will come out, but I'll stop talking about that. Why am I interested in EU citizenship and the EU citizens' rights? Well, EU citizens' rights are very powerful, and we have, and I think it could be said that we still have some very valuable rights as EU citizens. So when I thought about the vote and the apparent outcome, and I thought, what does that mean for my EU citizenship and my rights? So what I did was I went to, sorry, I just arranged a paper here. I talked to a number of lawyers, and I said to them, what is this going to mean for my EU citizenship and my rights? And they said, well, no one can take your EU citizenship away. No one has that legal power, and no one has the legal power to remove your rights. So what I did was, there's about 5 lawyers, having had these lawyers tell me this, on the 28th of July, 2016 at 11:29 in the morning, I wrote to Mr. Barnier just after he'd been appointed as negotiator. I copied the email to Mr. Juncker, and I wrote as follows: Dear Mr. Barnier, as I understand it, Mr. Jean-Claude Juncker, to whom this email is copied, has just asked you to handle discussions about matters which may arise following the 23rd of June referendum in the UK. The purpose of my letter is to let you know that it is my understanding, on the basis of the legal advice I have received, that no one has the power to remove from me my EU citizenship or any of the rights which flow from that, and that the same is true for my wife, Mrs. Cindy Silver, and indeed for any and all other UK citizens. I'm therefore writing to you with a copy to Mr. Juncker to ask you to confirm to me in writing that my understanding is correct. I might add that my own analysis of the situation leads me to believe that, following the vote on the 23rd of June, there are currently at least 19 million voting age UK citizens who, like me, most certainly wish to continue to be full EU citizens. And they are prepared to take whatever action may be necessary to ensure that their EU citizenship does not change as a result of the referendum vote. You might also perhaps be interested to learn that the UK government undemocratically excluded over 2 million voting age British citizens from the vote in the Act of Parliament which set up the referendum. All of that statement of fact. In fact, the over 2 million is 5 million. The Referendum Act of 2015 disenfranchised 5 million people who had been promised a vote in the referendum by Cameron in his manifesto. So that, and then that's the background. So I think that explains where I'm coming from. Now, what happened was Barnier, it was quite interesting, quite amusing, really. Barnier, he wrote back a whole load of waffle, the stuff that you get from bureaucrats. It's bureaucratic waffle, meaningless waffle. And then one of the letters got lost, but eventually I got another copy. I have them all here. If anyone wants copies, just ask me. I'll give you a copy of all of this correspondence. So then there are 1 or 2 key steps on the way to this case. What happened was I just tell you, because I think in the law, these things are important. On the 19th of April of last year, I wrote to him and I asked him what had happened, and he didn't really reply. So again, I wrote to him again and I said, look, I asked an EU lawyer who said, actually, taking away your EU citizenship and your rights is a breach of the EU rule of law. Serious stuff. So I wrote to Barnier and I told him that, and then what he did was on the 3rd of September I wrote and said, look, this is a breach of the EU rule of law. And then he wrote back to me on the 29th of October last year saying, thank you for your latest email concerning the withdrawal of the UK from the EU. We take note of your intention to begin legal proceedings. Now, for me, this is a bit of a flyer, because at that time, what I'd done, I'd asked a whole swathe of lawyers. I told them what I'd been told. And I said, look, I've been told that these guys are trying to take away my citizenship rights. They can't. And I asked maybe 4 or 5 EU lawyers, and got some of them actually said they would run a case for me. One of them asked if I gave her a couple of £1,000, she'd run a case, but it was never clear that they knew what case to bring. But in parallel with this process, so we're in October, and Barnier's written to me and said, yeah, okay, we know you're going to bring proceedings. I didn't know what proceedings to bring. I didn't know what the case
even then,
was.
there's like an interesting point, because like a lot of people in the Leave campaign were saying that the EU aren't accountable, they're not transparent. But there you are, that you wrote to Barnier and you got responses.
Absolutely.
So it just shows like they are accountable.
No, they are accountable. They're not straight. I'd say they're not straight.
Right.
I'll explain why. Why.
Do you want to tell us about your legal case then? How it
well,
actually
that's why
came
I'm
to
coming.
be?
I'm coming to it. I'm coming to it. Okay. So what then happened was, well, in parallel, I thought it would be interesting to establish how many people wanted to preserve the EU citizenship. So way back when, I asked the European Parliament, I said, look, could you put up a sign-up page? Just invite people to sign up if they want to preserve their citizenship and their rights. I discovered that that was impossible. It's not that they refused, it's just that no one knew how to do it. So then what I did, I have a friend who's very good at creating websites. So I wrote up my own website, which is entitled EUCitizenship.org.uk. And the text in it says, if you want to retain your EU citizenship and rights, please leave your name and address here, and we'll do what we can. And that site got up to, it had about 70,000 signatures by about January of this year. And a dear friend who's a journalist who knew about it, he said, I think there should be an article. So there was an article written in the London Economic by Oliver Murphy, and what it said was, group of EU citizens are going to take legal action. We still didn't know what action we were going to take, right? But we didn't know what, we didn't have a specific case as such, other than all these lawyers were telling me they can't do it, but weren't telling me what the true legal position was. I was very lucky. What happened was that article was read by a superb EU lawyer, Dr. Alexandra von Westenhagen, who is both a lawyer in London and a lawyer in Brussels, where she teaches EU law. And she had been sitting thinking about the case for a couple of years. And she emailed me. She found my email address, emailed me and said, yeah, you're right, actually. They can't take your citizenship and rights away. And here's why. And she laid out, and if you look on eucitizenship.org.uk, you'll find the legal case laid out there, but in bullet point form. Well, then we chatted about it. And then we held a meeting in February in London with a few other like-minded people, and we decided to bring the case based on the points that Alexandra had brought up. And that case is case number T25220, and it was filed on the 23rd of April of this year, and you'll find it described on the eucitizenship.org.uk website, and it is now progressing through the court system. And effectively what it does is to ask the court to simply confirm that no politician or bureaucrat has the power to blanket remove EU citizenship and rights from 66 million people. So that is a very lengthy answer to your question number one. I think no, number
That's
two.
very
In
comprehensive. Yeah.
fact, well, I do try to be. It's training as an experimental physicist. Could I tell you why EU citizenship is important? I think you can see the mess that's going on now in the UK.
Yeah.
It's obvious.
Mm-hmm.
So a bunch of fascists and racists decide to pull the UK out of the EU, and this is what happens. And I choose my words with a little care.
And this,
So.
and so
Uh,
what sorry. So when will the first hearing be, and what will actually happen, do you know?
Yeah, well, what it does is, I would anyone that's really interested should go to our website and have a look because it's quite technical, as I'm sure you will realise as a lawyer. We put in our argument. First of all, you might say, well, why are you pursuing the EU? Why aren't you pursuing Johnson? Well,
Mm-hmm.
no one in the UK has the power to remove your EU citizenship. They sort of try by whipping you out of the EU and hoping that the bureaucrats will work with them, which is why I say that although you say they're transparent, they're not entirely straight because they don't have the legal power to do this. But they thought they'll try it on, see if they get away with it.
And
But
when you say it's the EU that you're suing, is it actually the
I'm coming to that, if I
commissioner?
may.
Sorry.
I'm coming to that. If you, I just hold up this. Well, this is again, if you there's if you look in the official journal of the EU of the 29th of June of this year, you'll find the description of the case, and essentially, okay, you want to bring a case like this, here's what you do. You find a superb lawyer who tells you what the case is, and then you find a solicitor and a barrister, and the barrister works out the case, and our barrister is Professor Takis Tridimas, who is the professor of EU law at King's College London. I think is it King's College? I think it's King's College, and one of the best EU lawyers in the world. And you find him and he brings the case for you and he explains. So then who are we suing? Oh, not suing, it's the wrong term. Who are we bringing a case against? It's the Council of the EU because
Okay.
they have the power. What they do is they then write a note to the Parliament saying, get shot of them. And then we write to them and say, why did you write that note? You don't have that power. Then they come back and so their first trick. So we wrote the full argument for why this is a breach of the EU rule of law. And the council come back and say, those guys have no standing. So their first trick was to say, don't have standing.
Yeah.
But Takis is very good. So he writes back and says, actually, we do have standing. So then I think there was another exchange and they wrote back and said, no, they don't. And then the court sits, it starts in the general court. The general court has a look at it and they say, do they have standing? Now,
can you just explain for the audience what standing actually means? Because it's like a particular legal term, isn't it?
it means that you're allowed to bring the case.
Mm-hmm.
You can tell the listeners better than me, but I think it's or viewers, sorry. It is essentially whether or not you are qualified or authorized or whatever the term is to bring the case. Now, it would be preposterous for a bunch of bureaucrats to say not only can we take all their rights away, but they haven't got the right to come to the court and say we can't do that. It's absurd. But that's common sense, and the law isn't common sense. So you get the best lawyer you can, and he explains why it's preposterous and outrageous. And then what then happens is the general court has a look at it, and they sit and they think, Now, the general court could have said, they could have gone and said, no, sorry, council's right, get lost. You haven't got standing, but they didn't. What they did was they said, we will consider very carefully whether they've got standing, but we will also consider their case, which must have annoyed the hell out of the bureaucrats in the Council of the EU, because they hoped they could just dismiss us, but that didn't work. So what's happening now is that the General Court have added another 2 judges, so I think we're up to 5 now, and they're going to consider, have we got standing? Are they going to consider our case? And then hopefully they will refer it to the Court of Justice, who will then sit and think, is it right for bureaucrats and politicians to take away valuable rights from 66 million people without asking them? I quote from Pleas in Law and Main Arguments. The applicants claim that by depriving them of their status of union citizenship and the fundamental rights arising therefrom, the Council has breached Articles 20 and 23 TFEU, Article 50 TFEU, Articles 39, 40, 45 and 46, as well as Articles 7 and 19 of the Charter, the principles of proportionality, of equal treatment and of legitimate expectations. Therefore, the applicants claim that union citizenship is the fundamental status of EU nationals. As such, it is personal in nature, and once vested, it does not automatically demise upon the withdrawal of the United Kingdom. The applicants allege that no person may be deprived arbitrarily of their union citizenship status and the rights flowing therefom. There you go.
So there it is in black and white.
Absolutely.
We're just running short on time. I'll just see if there's any questions on social media. Is there any questions coming in, Paul?
Yeah, so there's one question from Tim, which is really, it's kind of parallel to your action, or maybe slightly orthogonal. And it's really this idea of, imagine your action fails completely, but it's this kind of related idea of UK citizens being able to somehow gain back those rights through some kind of maybe paying for associated membership or something.
Yeah.
What's your view of those kind of ideas?
Okay, I think that's actually very straightforward and very simple. At this stage, the legal position as laid out by us is that the attempt to remove our EU citizenship and rights is unlawful. Now, okay, you go through the process and you see what the court thinks. If the court says, well, sorry, it was lawful, which we don't think they will, actually. We think if it gets into the Court of Justice, the judges are will have a real problem saying, yes, of course they can take your rights away. How can you do that? But if they do, then you can go back and say, well, how about, can we have associate citizenship? But now is not the time. It's not logical to do that. There's no need to, because the formal legal position is that there has been no ruling. The council are trying to get our rights and citizenship away from us, but they do not have legal authority for that. There isn't any legal authority. So you go through the process, and it could take a long time, but I can see no argument for starting to fight for associate citizenship. It also weakens what we're doing, because we simply don't accept that they have this power. So why would you do it? Why wouldn't you first of all get the answer to our question and then take it from there? Is that have I been clear?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Okay.
That's great. And then, so I see that you're crowdfunding your legal costs. How is that going?
Well, it's actually went rather well. In fact, at the risk of perhaps being a little bit humorous, when the case started, one of the partners, he will know. He's probably not watching, but he will know. Right at the beginning, he said to me, "How much money have you got?" As lawyers sometimes do. Now, Alexandra never said that, but her boss said, "How much money you got?" And I said, "I'm a professor of physics. You know, I'm retired, although I'm still a professor of physics. Long story, and I don't have much money." And he said, "I don't think this case will go anywhere." So I said, "I'll crowdfund it." And he said, "Oh, all right." And just started a crowdfunder, and the crowdfunder certainly has raised enough money to take us to this stage. It will keep needing money, that's clear, but we haven't been short of money. And your question here says, would you like to take this opportunity to appeal for donations? I don't feel comfortable appealing for donations, but what we do is each time when we need money, we explain to the 150,000 people, and hopefully it'll become more, many more, that in order to continue, we have to find some money so that our lawyers can eat. So that answers that question, I think. Is that,
Okay.
again, have I been clear?
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Like, that's good to hear that it's gone really well.
Yeah, very well. Amazing. Well, no, it's not. It's not really amazing. People feel very strongly about this. The one problem I would say is that most people aren't even aware of the case. You know, if Channel 4 News said, "Oh, wait a minute, there's a case it's a case in the European Court." You know what? It's arguable that all British citizens are still EU citizens. If they made that known, I think we'd have much more support, but it's all somehow suppressed. And I don't know why. Mind you, I suppose I haven't made that much of a fuss about it. Perhaps everyone can make a fuss.
Yeah, no harm in doing that.
Well, if you think about it, why on earth wouldn't you? Why, you know, what on earth is the reason for taking away the freedom of movement of British citizens? It's madness. It costs you money if you want to come to Europe. It will damage your education if you want to join one of the educational systems. So people, it would be surprising if people didn't support this. And the basic problem is that we're very small. I mean, the team that took this forward at one stage is just me, and I'm not a very big team. But there are lots of people who've joined and helped. But really, millions of people should be made aware of this. Arguably, they still have EU citizenship. We could ask the Court of Justice to rule that until they rule, we have EU citizenship. But Takis thought that might be legally a bit dangerous. I don't know why. So we decided not to do it. I mean, it's very technical. As you will know, the law is very technical. But it is fair to say, I believe it's fair to say that no one can claim that anyone in the UK has lost their EU citizenship yet, because the case has not been decided.
That's true, yeah. Okay, we've got about 1 minute left, and we'll just see if there's any more questions on social media.
Oh dear.
Never
mind. I think we've covered most of the stuff, haven't we?
Yeah, well, there's just one more question, which I'm going to expand a little bit, which is really asking, what would actually, imagine you succeeded, what are the consequences? I mean, so specifically, given that the UK is no longer a member of the EU, is it well defined what would actually be retained for UK citizens? Is that sort of legally well defined?
Yeah, it's all the rights. Still have all the rights.
I guess what you're arguing is that, like, the Charter of Fundamental Rights would still apply to all British citizens.
Yeah, you just have all the rights.
Yeah.
It would make Johnson and his mates look a bit silly as well, because, you know, they're crowing that they've managed to do something about it. Well, they won't have done. But if you say we haven't got, I'm just looking at your questions here. I mean, I don't think there's nothing I think we've got across the key points. I would say, how long do we have before we have to stop?
Well, we can keep talking a couple more minutes if you have.
Well, yes,
more
I do. I do. I've done one or two other things. I've been looking, in effect, looking for what legal mechanisms really exist to deal with the perfidy that's being acted on the British public now by Johnson's government. And I go back to my original point, which is there was no democratic justification for what they did. And I think that what they're doing now, I think if you look at what has happened in the last few days, you can see a new strain has come along. The virus has given rise to a new strain, and Britain has been closed, as it were. And in a way, the virus is waking people up, the new strain, and saying, look what these guys are up to. And it is obvious if you or I imagine anyone watching, were in the situation that they'd say, well, let's just extend the negotiations because we haven't come to an agreement. We must come to an agreement. Now, Johnson says he's not going to do that. It is my belief that the reason for that is actually very simple. It's because he's got a bunch of guys who paid for him. They paid for his prime ministerial campaign. There is evidence that they sort of helped move Mrs. May on. And the situation we now have is that you have a prime minister, you have a group of guys who've paid for him, but they've also bet huge sums of money that there's going to be a major change on the 31st of December. And they stand to make a fortune off that. They've bet something like, the reports suggest about £4 billion are wagered on there being effectively no deal at the end of the month. And then they take home billions. Now, and they are the guys who finance Johnson. I actually think, since it's obvious that there is no good argument for not extending the discussions with the EU, there has to be another reason. And I believe that the reason is that there's a financial imperative there. And I am considering bringing a misconduct action with others against the Prime Minister for this, because I think this is misconduct in public office.
And there's an added complication that they're considering reviewing the Human Rights Act as well.
Oh, that's different. That's different.
Yeah. That's
actually different. You have to study it very carefully. But the guy, did you know? Have you studied what happened at the time of the referendum and the company called Cambridge Analytica? Mm-hmm. Do you know about that? Do you know?
Yeah.
Do you know that Cambridge Analytica was bought by a bloke by the name of Mercer, Robert Mercer, mm-hmm. and was used to fiddle the referendum vote? And do you know that he placed financial bets? And do you know that because they went the way he wanted, as it were, with his Cambridge Analytica, he took home $600 million? See, this is really, a lot of this is about money, and it's about capitalists manipulating things to make money. And that, when I look at it, I think, why wouldn't Johnson agree to doing the obvious thing now? And the only reason I can see is that there must be some other reason that hasn't yet been fully declared, as it were. And I believe there should be a very careful financial investigation. There you go.
Okay. Yeah, we've covered a lot there in the last few minutes. We'll definitely be keeping a close eye on your case, that's for sure. I think we've run out of time, but thank you so much. It's been really interesting.
You're very welcome. Yeah.
Okay, and thanks, Paul and Byrne, there for keeping that
Yeah.
going as well.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
It's very nice to meet you.
Okay,
But,
definitely, and we'll be keeping an eye on your case for sure.
well, there's going to be there will be a web page. I think we will put up for well, there is a web page for a misconduct action now, but circumstances have changed. The virus has altered, and it's made it imperative to carry on. Nicola Sturgeon said, up in Scotland, Nicola Sturgeon tweeted yesterday, "You must continue that," but John said no. But she didn't say, "Look, you're a bunch of gangsters who have essentially got that there has to be another reason for this. This isn't just politics. It can't be."
Yeah, I think probably Nicola Sturgeon probably a bit more diplomatic than that.
You think I was being undiplomatic? I was just saying it as a, but yes. Well, perhaps things would be better if some politicians came out and told it as it was.
Yeah, well, we'll live in hope. Well, anyway, thank you so much for coming this evening. It's been really interesting talking to you, and best of luck with your case.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.